All right, we got this. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Chris Alaimo.
And I'm Ben Gassaway. Together, we are the Amateur Investors.
This podcast is our open source journal of everything we learn about investing and wealth management.
We're here to explore the key concepts, market dynamics, and investing strategies that will assist you on the path toward financial independence and financial literacy. Our mission is to build us up from amateurs to experts.
All suggestions are our own, and we recommend that you do your own research before taking any investment advice. See you in this week's episode. We hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, how's it going? We have a very special guest here. We've got Jim Crider. He is a certified financial planner, and he is starting his own firm. We're very happy to have him on the show.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Just piggyback on that. We know that you just started your own firm, Intentional Living FP. That's really, really exciting to be sort of creating your own assets here. That's something we really advocate for in the amateur investors. I'd love to know a little bit about, what the mission statement is for Intentional Living, and sort of what led you to this point in your career to create your own asset and in your own business.
Yeah. So I started off in financial planning with a big retail company, working with people managing their 401ks, understanding how to general retirement planning and such. That was great. But over time, as I learned more about what financial planning is itself, so the technical side of things, so getting my CFP and reading books and studying and all that fun stuff, and then just having thousands and thousands of conversations, I came to realize the people I really enjoy working with. And frankly, maybe it's a little bit self-serving, but I like working with people like me. So I'm 31, and I have a family. I have a lot of hobbies, and I decided that I want to work with people who want to achieve early financial independence so they have more time to spend with the people that they care about, doing the things that they enjoy.
Yeah, honestly, that I think that's a beautiful thing. I know that when I'm thinking about my own personal investments, it's easy to get caught up in sort of assigning arbitrary metrics to your goals. But if you want to buy a house or you want to retire early, the 401k is not the way to do that. So that's really exciting. Congrats, Jim. Seriously.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, you're right. That who you serve and the issues that they face, it helps, because I'm not historically, I've worked with retirees. I had a position before that I worked specifically with physicians and professors on tax efficient and just efficient retirement planning. And that's exciting. I'm really grateful for everyone I've got to work with, but it's a different conversation trying to go from talking with a 70-year-old couple on Social Security planning, and then immediately trying to flip the script and go work with a 27-year-old who's trying to figure out, hey, I just started making a lot more money and I'm trying to pay off debt and I want to start a family and buy a house. That takes too much mental gymnastics, flipping from conversation to conversation. So I decided, well, who do I enjoy working with the most? Where do I feel like I can bring the most value? And just dig in really deep there.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's really cool that you took a specialization almost in the finance sector about working with, younger people, exactly like your mission statement. I know Ben and I look at financial planning in a way that we kind of look at it on a hierarchical lens, meaning that we try and look at, debt management first, whether it's college debt or credit card debt or whatever it may be, kind of mitigating that or bringing it down. Then we kind of look at building up a savings plan or an emergency fund. And then after that, kind of all the other income that you'd have coming in, excess, you could start kind of investing and putting into the market, whether that's starting with the 401k or an IRA, a personal account. And then after that, you could kind of have money on the side for fun activities or whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you help someone going through that journey? Or is it very similar, aligned with that? Is it different from that? Or what's your approach basically?
It can be. I mean, what you just described is a pretty boilerplate order of operations. Probably shouldn't max out a 401k if you don't have any cash in the bank, if you get a flat tire. So emergency fund's pretty basic. Maxing out a 401k or taking advantage of company match, those sort of things are, pretty decent rules of thumb, and rules of thumb exist for a purpose. They're good general advice, but frankly, this is going to sound, I don't know, maybe too meta or something, but it depends. What is important to you? I would hate for you to put a whole bunch of money in a 401k plan when maybe you are really interested in real estate. Like you just set yourself up for failure. So you first want to stop and assess, well, what's important to me and what's going to be the most efficient way to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, piggybacking on that point, like I was saying before, like it's sort of a gut reaction to just be like, I want to max out my 401k. There's sort of like these latent pressures because those limits exist. It sort of feels like self-fulfilling that I must do this in order to beat the IRS. But when you're talking through these clients, and you know, the name of this episode I thought was really prudent, Jim, to call this life-based investing, because that's really what investing should be. That's the goal. You only invest money so that you can have a means to an end. Otherwise, you just want to see a number get larger, I suppose, which is fun. But when you're working with clients or even just like friends or family, how do you sort of calibrate the list of questions for folks to figure out what is important to them? Because you can kind of make these broad brushstroke statements. I want to retire early. I want to have a fancy car. But how do you kind of boil down the what's important?
Yeah, that's so good. First off, I don't ask somebody like, I do not sit down and say, hey, what's your goals? That's a horrible question to ask, especially if it's just right in front of you. It's like, I don't know. And most people, if you ask them what their goals are, they're probably just going to throw out some arbitrary things that they feel like general consensus says are important. So I don't start with that. And frankly, I think if you start with goals themselves, you're apt to miss what's actually important to you. So for instance, a goal might be to be able to retire by the time you're 45. Okay, that's fantastic. But what's the underlying driver behind that? So you can simply ask like, okay, you want to retire at 45, that's fantastic. Why is that important to you? And just by asking that one additional question, cause you to think like, why 45? Well, I mean, for me personally, I'm 31. My goal is by the time I'm 45, just to have complete optionality with what I'm doing. The reason that's important for me is because I have 3 boys, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to spend with them before they have families of their own. I like to go backpacking and spend time in the mountains. I want to make sure that my sons and I can be able to go do these long trips, the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, those things, before they're too busy with their own families. That's why 45 for me is the goal. Now, if I wasn't aware of why that's important, I said, I want to retire at 45. And I thought, well, let's just go with that. Then I could be sucked into becoming a workaholic between now and 45, when frankly, I just missed the entire value proposition. So the underlying value is I want to be able to spend significant time with the people that I care about. So my kids. So it would be quite foolish for me to work really hard to be able to retire early so I can go on a trip with my kids, but never be there to tuck them in bed at night right now. So underlying what I do, and it could be explained through a flow chart, and that flow chart would start in values. The values are the underlying why, like what is driving the goals themselves. I've had thousands and thousands of conversations, and I found that very few people actually understand what's important to them. That's sad. Now, so there's values. Values they stay pretty consistent over a lifetime, unless you have some like religious awakening or something like that. Okay, so there's values, and then that informs goals. So goals are what most people think of when they think of like setting financial tasks and annually, like I got to lose weight, stuff like that. Goals are great, but frankly, goals change, and that's perfectly fine. That's why I don't really like the goals question unless it's actually posed after the values. Okay, so values and then goals. And again, the use of a goal is simply to inform the best next step. Okay, so then we have values and goals, then we have decisions. Okay, everything in life requires a decision. There's always trade-offs, there's always opportunity cost. Okay, and then finally there's actions, so actually taking action. So it's really important we actually make sure that all these things are aligned, starting again with why are you doing this, all the way through what are we doing. That was quite a tangent.
I know that wasn't a tangent. I thought that was actually really quite logical and sound. I think that what I've sort of found from conversations with folks, even myself, people jump immediately to the what. What do I want to do? What car do I want to have? What does my retirement account look at X, Y, Z years just by doing a compound interest calculator? But the why tends to be just completely procrastinated or entirely ignored. I don't know if you've read the book. I'm kind of shilling it to Chris. It's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah,
I've been listening to that book with Audible. I'll send it to you, Jim, if you haven't read it before.
I
But
love that book.
you've read it. It's fantastic. And the author really talks through building your North Star, essentially, like deriving what you do in principles, which are unchanging and permanent. The goals and what you do evolve over time, but your principles and values, the why, are everlasting. And I think that is so important to start there. That's the foundation that you build from.
That's exactly it. Actually, a Stephen Covey thing. He talks about leaning your ladder up against the wrong wall.
Yes.
And I have talked to phenomenally successful people in regards to
too.
simple finances. So I mentioned I've worked with a lot of physicians, like household income, high 6 figures, mid 7 figures, super crazy net worth, all that stuff. And I don't know how many times I've had clients cry in front of me. For instance, a very common narrative for a new client, we sit down, they're successful by all accounts when we look at finances. Everyone say like, man, this guy's got it going on. He's got to be so happy. We sit down and it's a couple. We start talking about, hey, you're doing great. You're 60 now and you have all the money in the world you want, blah, blah, blah. And then we just start peeling those onions back. Why did you do this? Why is this important? And a very common story is, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have much. And I had to hear my parents fight about money all the time. Every night I go to bed, hear my parents fight. I didn't know what our next meal would be. The power was turned off. I had horrible clothes and got made fun of. So when I was 10 years old, I made a vow that I would make sure that I made plenty of money so my kids had a better childhood than I had. And then we fast forward and it's, 50 years later, they're sitting in my office and we start talking about their money, how much money they made. And, everything sounds great surface level. But then we revisit that initial, why is this important to you? And then they come to recognize that, yeah, maybe when I was a kid, we didn't have much and heard my parents fight. But, I wanted to make sure that I made plenty of money so my kids had a better childhood than I had. But then now that I think about it, I don't know if they did. I never got to know my kids because I was so focused on the goal of having plenty of money that I lost sight of the value of making sure my kids have a good childhood. I don't know my kids. And now they're 30 and have their own families. I don't know if they were happy. Yeah, they had plenty of stuff, but I venture to say maybe I had a better childhood than they had. And that's hard. That's why I'm not a counselor, but my gosh, it's about life. Your money is just nothing more than simply a resource and a tool that is there to help you do what's important to you in life. And if we're not aligning your wealth, your time, your skills, your talents with your life, very high probability that you have your ladder leaning against the wrong wall. And maybe you climbed up real high and you're looking down at people, but my gosh, you missed it. That's a scary thing. And it takes intentionality and it takes continual intentionality. You can set a goal once and run after it, but if you're flying a plane, I don't know the statistics, but I think if you fly a plane from LA to New York and you're off by 1 degree, you're going to end up in, DC or Miami or something like that. You don't want to wait until you're over Colorado and then make this massive change. Just take continual small adjustments, be intentional, stay on track. And that's okay.
Wow,
Yeah,
Jim, that was really insightful. I loved a lot of that. A lot of thinking points that were coming to me there. I know Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you follow him on social media stuff, kind of entrepreneurial, and he's always kind of promoting stuff. I know he said kind of exact same sentiment what you were saying. He's like, he has tons of friends that are multimillionaires, 7, 8, 9 figures is how much their net worth is, but they're super unhappy, depressed. And it's like the money doesn't make them happy. And then he's got buddies that make $45,000 a year. They coach their kids' softball team. They've never missed a meal at home. They don't have much, but they're the happiest people in the world. So it just kind of takes me back to that, whose goals are aligned. Yeah, they have a ton of money, but they're miserable versus not having as much money, but they're the coolest parent in the world. So it's kind of, that really aligns with your values. I know my boss, she's a female, she's a mother of 2, and she came from DuPont. And the old CEO of DuPont, her name was Ellen Kuhlman. She's a really cool lady. She was the CEO for, I think, 5 to 6 years. awesome, awesome person. A person that I look up to in just the business world, and also like as a parent. I don't have kids of my own yet, but and I love my parents. I think they raised me very well. But she always said
I think
that
so too, Chris.
What?
I think so too, Chris.
Thanks, buddy. But she always said that when you think of it as an employee, so she's the CEO of DuPont, big company, many people know it. She said, when you're breaking down a person, you are the person first, your family, friends, and your religion second, and then your employee last. So meaning that like each of those persons need to be aligned. So, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's kind of like the joke or the talk about in an airplane, when you're in an emergency and the oxygen mask drop, you need to, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help someone else. So, you need to take care of your person, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual, whatever it may be. You're the sum of your family and friends next. If, you're having problems with your spouse or with your kids or with your parents, that needs to be taken care of. I can't really give advice on that, how to take care of it. It's individual for each person. But then your employee last. And she actually made a real big point of that. She's like, I'm the CEO of the company, and if I don't have enough time to take care of my husband and our sons, I'm not as good of a leader as I can be as CEO if I'm having issues at home. And she said, not that she made choices, and she's like, I don't regret any of my choices in business or anything that I've done. But she's like, not that I sacrificed my kids when they're younger, but I was busy working. But as soon as my kids turned 14, she's like, I didn't miss, all her sons played lacrosse. She's like, I didn't miss a single game. It's like, I don't care if, Dow was calling us about missed shipment. I don't care if there was a board meeting the next day. I don't care if, I had to travel to China the next morning. She's like, I didn't miss my kids' games. There's compromises. She's like, I'd go to the game and then I'm working at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. But she's like, she put her family first, and her as a person, her family, and then the company. And I really look up to her. You can YouTube a lot of her talks. She's excellent, well-spoken. I'm bummed she's no longer the CEO. I think she stepped down a few years ago, but great leader all around.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're going to give up something, as I mentioned. So if you follow that flow chart, not to rehash this, but again, anchored in values, and then goals, and then decisions. Like, everything requires a trade-off. What are you going to give up? That way you can go after something else.
Yeah.
So like she was sacrificing sleep. And that's okay. Like, something's got to give. For me, like I make it a point. I read to at least one of my boys every night before they go to bed. That's really important. I want to make sure that they know that I love them, that I'm there for them, that I want to tuck them in. Like, I'm not going to miss that. So for me, most nights, like, my time to work and enjoy like reading about taxes or estate or psychology is usually from like 9 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So I just don't sleep much, but like I can sleep later on. And not the cliche that like, I can sleep when I'm dead, and I know sleep's important. But
it's optional.
I cannot get these moments back. So I will make sure that I'm there for that. That price on the altar of financial success, because the money serves that. My kids don't serve the money, and we have to keep that in order.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you described it as sacrifice, but I think I would maybe counter that in thinking that like you more or less are just refining the strategy. I don't think of it as a sacrifice if you have within your heart of hearts decided what your priorities are. Because at the end of the day, you're not sacrificing, you're just eliminating distractions from your priorities. So if you have decided distinctly that, family is important, losing 30 minutes of sleep, that's not necessarily a sacrifice. It's just my priorities take precedent.
Yeah. I think it's the book Essentialism by somebody. I can't remember the name. There's a book called Essentialism. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's basically that essentialists don't ask, what am I going to give up? But rather, what am I going to go big on? So it flips that script from like, well, I have to do this. Rather, man, I get to do this. This is a joy. And that's really cool. So yeah, obviously all these things, like, this is really important. If you are arbitrarily, go see a financial advisor and they sit down like, hey, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to retire when I'm 63 and be able to go to Florida so I can play shuffleboard twice a year. It's like, okay, here's a mutual fund. Like, that's not good. Like, you wouldn't want to go to a doctor and they're like, hey, my stomach hurts. Like, okay, perfect. Here's this generic drug. Like, I want to make sure my clients are adequately known and fully understood before I prescribe anything to them. So, it might sound like I am, I don't know, undervaluing the technical side of things, which I don't want to give that message. Like I've never met someone else besides me who, for fun, right after I passed my CFP test, just reread my books again, just out of joy. So I love that side of things. But over time, I've come to realize, like, man, this industry is incredible. Like, I get to help people live the life they want. And like, I like numbers. I like taxes and estate and investments and stuff. But frankly, I don't enjoy it because, like, yeah, you got to save X dollars in taxes this year. It's, man, that's X dollars more that you get to put to your daughter's wedding one day. Like, one of the best compliments I can get is I had one of my clients, as we got to know each other better, we set up an account for his daughter for her wedding, and she was 3. He said, Jim, I fully anticipate and expect you to be at her wedding. And I was like, man, that's incredible. Like that is such a joy. So it's not about like, I made you whatever % return in your investments this year. It's like, man, this is your daughter's wedding we're talking about. That's amazing.
Yeah, I got goosebumps from that. Honestly, like
That's awesome. That's
really a profound statement to say to someone. And like, you might not think, I don't have a financial advisor yet, Jim. I may hire you. We will see. I think it's a really profound statement for someone. Like, it's not like you said, you're not just making money. You are enabling life decisions and life possibilities. And you are sort of that guide for that client to do so, to support his daughter's wedding. It's not so much just checking the box of a number. You're making something possible. And I think that really clicked for him to make that statement to you. And that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, you used the right word, guide. And you cut me off if I'm going too much, but this is
your episode.
Man, I love this stuff, if you can't tell. So I sort of tend to be a workaholic. Like I love this stuff. And my wife, her name's Kendra. A few years ago, Kendra was still working, and we only had 1 kid at the time. I think we had her second on the way. And every night at dinner, she'd have to hear me talk about some new, like, tax strategy or client conversation or something cool I got to do. And finally, one night we're having dinner. She said, Jim, I don't understand how you enjoy your job so much. She hated her job and she just desperately wanted to be able to quit work. She said, I don't understand how you like your work so much. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, both as a client and as a job, it sounds sort of miserable. So I asked her, I said, well, babe, if this sounds so horrible, what do you think I do? Like, what do you picture of a financial planner doing? And what do you expect as like the client? So she told me. She sat back and thought about it for a sec. She said, well, when I think of going to a financial planner, I think of going and sitting at a all mahogany office with some old white guy. And hey, I hope to be an old white guy one day. If I'm not, that's bad news. I go into this mahogany office with this old man with cufflinks on, one of those white collared shirts and a real crisp suit. And there's just like this big desk and giant leatherback chairs. And he just quizzes me for like 2 hours about, why are you spending so much money on these things? And how much money do you think you're going to spend on utilities when you're 73? And what do you think about mutual funds? She's like, that sounds horrible. I feel like I have to act like I understand what he's saying, but I don't know what he's talking about. And I don't really know why it's that important to me right now, how much I'm going to spend on utilities when I'm old. Like, that doesn't sound like a good experience. She said at the end of that, he'll probably tell me that I may or may not be able to retire in 35 years, and he'll give me like a 2-inch thick packet of like graphs and charts and stuff that I don't know what they're saying. And then he'll say, let's talk again next year. We'll do it again. So that sounds
5% commission.
Yeah. You're welcome. She said that sounds boring as a job. Like, you're sitting there, graphs and charts and mutual funds. And as a client experience, that sounds really bad. Like, I don't know what I want in 30 years. I don't know what I'm going to spend, all that stuff. And I said, okay, well, if that sounds like a bad experience, what would be a good client experience? Like, what would you expect? And she sat back and she said, well, I wish that we had someone that you and I could just go in and sit down and talk with someone together about what we want in life and how, if we can accomplish it, and how so. And the things that we want to avoid, how can we do that to the best of our ability? I want to be able to quit work. Can I do that? Would it be possible for you to start your own business one day? Man, what if we could get a house in the mountains? Could we do that? Do we need to send our kids to private school? Can they go to public school? Do we homeschool? What are the implications of these things? How do we do this? So that sounds amazing. And I want someone to just be able to, you actually used the word earlier, then you said guide. She said, I want someone who can guide us and help us have those good conversations about what we want in life, and then guide us as we make decisions along the way. So, man, I just sat back and I said, so that sounds great, doesn't it? She said, yeah, but that doesn't sound like a financial advisor. And I said, well, what would you name that if you could? She said, I guess I'd call it a life planner. And I got like probably the biggest grin ever. I said, babe, like you literally just described why I'm so excited about my job. And you actually put a name to it. Like, I don't consider like, I'm a financial planner, but like it's about your life. And I think that's when she got it. And like, this is why I'm excited. I can't imagine doing something else for work. Like if I won the Powerball today, I keep doing this. It's such a joy.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great story. So I guess you got to become, instead of just a CFP, a CLP, certified life planner. That's awesome. That gives me goosebumps. I'm even lost for thought right now. I guess if you want to comment, Ben.
No, I think that's really how it should be. And going back to sort of we need to put in links in our show notes to these books, but that's even what like Stephen Covey was saying in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is like you always sort of have the choice to do anything. You can wake up today and, or tomorrow and quit your job. I think a lot of people forget that option exists. You can choose all the time. Not everything is obviously in your wheelhouse of control, but if you hate your job, you can quit tomorrow. But I think you even said, if you're on the right track, tracks split sometimes. So you don't want to go too far on the wrong track, fork that road if you need to, take a pit stop. But it's always nice to like reflect on what is important to me. And it's amazing that you found your calling at 31 to be so excited about something like that. So props to you, Jim.
Thanks. And you just made a good point. So the way I engage with my clients, it's my firm, it's called Intentional Living FP. And basically like, again, my job is to live anywhere and everywhere that my client's life and money intersect, understanding that your money is just a resource to help you live the life that you want. And I want to make sure we don't neglect your life in the midst of the financial planning side of things. So the way I do that is we purposely meet at least once per year simply to talk about your life. Like, hey, you said that you want to make sure that you're going to your daughter's dance recitals. Are you doing that? Did you go on that vacation you said you're going to do? Are you doing that date night every other week like you said is important to you? Because if we're not doing those things, like we miss the boat anyways. And then we also have an annual meeting about the macro plan, all that stuff. And then we have monthly interactions about specific micro touch points. But it comes back to, again, like, are you doing what's important to you? I think it's wise to have a plan for the future, but it's even more wise to make sure that you're planning for the future while also living in the present.
Definitely. When you're sort of working with clients and, you outline the principles, your values, that can be a daunting task to like really think introspectively about like what defines me as a person. When you meet with your clients, a year, 2 years later, what are some strategies that you get or that you employ to sort of like get your clients to refine and dig in deeper to their values? And has there been an experience where someone has sort of totally overturned what's important to them? And how did you handle that? Have you experienced something like that? Loaded question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So again, if we go back to values and then goals change a lot. Like heck, my goals are a lot different today than they were a few years ago. And I know they're going to be different later on. And again, a goal shouldn't steer what I think I'm going to do in 30 years, but rather what I'm going to do next. Values stay consistent. The only times that I can think of values changing, truly the only thing to think about would be like a religious conversion. So for me personally, like I'm a Christian. My ultimate calling, my ultimate who I am is a Christian. Now, pre-Jesus, priorities were different. So that's an example of foundational and fundamental who I am has been changed. But besides that, I don't think I've come across anyone whose like entire value system has been flipped. Goals change again, but like who you are, that's pretty well set unless you have some sort of like awakening or conversion. What do you think? And what about you? What do you think about that?
No, it's a difficult, I'm trying to think through my own difficult question. I think at first reaction, you would think that your values wouldn't change, but I do believe that people not necessarily change, but they evolve over time. I think if you were to ask me, 4 or 5 years ago, what's important to me, I would have, how old am I? I guess I would have said, I want to just like make a lot of money. I want to start my own business. But I don't think I would have ever really asked the why. And maybe I wasn't mature, and I'm still not mature enough to truly appreciate what that means. But I just wonder if some people aren't ready to be asked those questions yet, or at least not to answer it truthfully. I think it's difficult to filter out the pride per se and the ego. So I think the only reason why I ask that is, 1, 2, 5 years later, when specific life events happen, I think it can be a formative experience about how you think about yourself and the world around you. Because I think deep down you have your own drivers, whether it be fame, family, money, stability, security, fun. But I think the flavors can change. The flavor of that overall can change. I'm struggling for the words to describe it. I just wonder, like, as people sort of go through specific life events, if they have sort of like an aha moment.
Yeah, I would say that happens. I don't know. I think if someone would have pressed you 5 years ago, I think we would still arrive at the same conclusion. Like, man, people are really important. Like maybe now for you, you're not married, so maybe being with people you love is really important to you. And maybe in 10 years, if you have wife and kids, maybe it's really important to you then. But who might be a little bit different. Like right now, it might be like, I want to make sure I can spend time with my friends on Friday night and go on a big trip with a couple of buddies each year. It's like, all right, cool. Maybe in 10 years, it's like, I want to make sure I'm there with my kids at night and I'm going on a family vacation. Perfect. The underlying people, that's what it's about. Relationship, community. Yeah, that's there. It looks a little bit different. It is hard to uncover. There's questions that I use. There's amazing financial planners who have gone before me to do a lot of work on like helping people uncover their why and their value system that I've sort of I use their questions. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good answer to a complicated and very individualized question. So I appreciate sort of the insights on that. You're right. I think with anyone, including myself, or really just anyone thinking introspectively about what is important to them, there are, like you said, whether it's people, there are themes that I think stay consistent. It's just that the details will evolve. So I guess one question I do have is, are there any common themes that you see between clients? Like any sort of like I said before, like any aha moments that clients often share, or like maybe also the most common challenges that a client faces when going through this exercise. I'd love to hear sort of their experience too, and maybe even from your side, how you got to where you are with your own financial goals and values.
Yeah, man, let me parcel it up into questions. So I guess, is there a consistent aha moment or like realization?
Yeah.
That whether people have a ton of money or not much at all, the most common drivers underlying this is important to me in life is about spending time with the people I care about, the ability to pursue the things that are important to me, time freedom. Those are the themes. Like, my gosh, like I had a client, she's an executive at a really great company, and she broke down crying in a meeting because she said, I have golden handcuffs and I haven't been happy in about 20 years. The last time I was happy was when I was a barista in college, pouring lattes. And I wish I could just leave my job and go and pour lattes again. That's what we created. We created a plan for her to be able to quit at 45, go sling drinks at Starbucks 20 hours a week, and actually have the freedom she wants, because that's what she wanted. So again, I get the time freedom, being with the people you care about, and the ability to pursue passions, those, and then like health and wellness. People really want that, the ability to take care of yourself. But even that goes back, well, why is being healthy and well, why is that important to you? Well, gosh, like for me personally, I want to make sure like I try to stay fit and eat well and all that stuff. Why? Because I want to make sure that when I'm old, I'm able to still go on hikes with my kids. I should be able to kick my kids' butt in basketball until I'm about, I don't know, until they're about 18. Until then, the mantle, the torch should not pass. So yeah, I want to take care of myself, but that's not like, you have to ask why. Why that? So those are the consistent themes. As far as like aha moments, the initial reason I got into this industry was I wanted to help families have healthy conversations around money and actually align their money with what's truly important to them. So that's a big aha moment. Like most people don't know how to talk about money. Like one, it's like it's the last remaining taboo. And then even like couples themselves, like I've had so many like conversations with families who are about to get a divorce because they're just on the total, like maybe they're actually both going for the same thing. Like you work too much, you don't work enough. Okay, why are we fighting? What's important? Well, I wish you worked more so we had more money so we can go on vacation with the kids. Well, I wish you worked less so you'd be with the kids now. It's like, oh, you want the same things. So helping people, facilitating healthy conversations around money, like that's amazing. And that's something that's a big aha for people, is actually having a conversation. How do you facilitate that? Man. And then, yeah, you can get like the technical side of things. Like there's a lot of, there's funny things that come along as far as like, goofy financial, like, hey, I have a whole bunch of cash and I have credit card debt at 29% interest, but I think I'm going to go and, invest it in the market. It's like, you think you can beat 29% risk-free? Like, if not, might make sense to pay off the debt.
Yeah.
I like the might make sense.
Yeah.
Disclosures.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really great. And it's really interesting hearing everything that you're saying. I know people just people in general, I feel like we have a hard time separating the numbers from like the people themselves. It's like easy to look at like the check you're getting. It's easy to look at like what your retirement accounts say. It's easy to look about your next bonus, but we have a really hard time, like exactly like you said, money's just a tool and no more, no less. It's what you do with that tool that really sets you apart. And, that's kind of goes back to your values proposition of the whole planning thing. I know Ben and I started this and I love talking about finance. I geek out about it. Jim, I'm just like you. I do my day job as an engineer from, 8 to 5. And then afterwards I have dinner with my family. And then I'm like reading books, going on Twitter, doing as much research. I'm doing less entertainment than just doing that, but always have some fun with the entertainment on Twitter. But yeah, no, I know a lot of people, aside from not separating the numbers, a lot of people look at it as so cumbersome. I know it just kind of seems in this day and age and just our schooling system or the way it is, a lot of people, you're set up from K through 12th grade. And, then it's like, it gets so overwhelming picking a college or a major. And then it's so overwhelming picking a job. And then in between all of that, no one decides like, oh, like I'll deal with the money problem later. It's always like your next worry isn't about money. And I like that you kind of combine, it's like, it's more about the values. And then we can map the goals from there. And then we can like plan for the future. A lot of people just kind of, I don't want to say like instant gratification, that's definitely true, but it's almost like they're just kind of like misguided, and like the description of you being a guide or helping them, or just kind of talking to them and finding out how they are as a person, and you worry about the money side later on. And if they're really into it, I'm sure you could talk them to death about the numbers, the money, the mutual funds, the index funds, the stocks, the bonds, all of that.
I'll get in the weeds with you all day talking about mega backdoor Roth conversions and like, I don't know, tax loss harvesting or capital gains harvesting or whatever you want to talk about. I love that stuff. But again, that stuff serves your life. So we have to make sure we don't put the cart in front of the horse.
Definitely.
Exactly.
And I think we'll probably maybe wrap up pretty soon, just because we're getting close to the 45-minute mark. But I think I would say at the end of high school or at the end of college, depending on what you choose to do with like your professional and academic career, that period post-graduation to whatever, maybe retirement, is sort of the most black box, like chunk of time in life where you're not just getting the grades, take the test, go on to the next year, take the grades, take the test, go to summer break. You're really at the helm of your own life. And I really like the way that you frame your money being the resource, the utility to achieve what is important to you in life. And it doesn't need to even be an achievement, but rather just like a way of life. And like that way of life can just be spending time with your family, or making time to read a book, or to have a garden, understanding like what is important to you, creating, spending time with people, being yourself. I think a lot of people, it's just always important, always relevant to check in with yourself, and understand. We were talking about climbing up the ladder on the wrong wall. You really need to figure out what wall you're trying to climb. And if you even need to take the first step on that rung, like maybe you're already at the right floor. So I love the way that you framed everything. And I'm really excited to work with you to build out that flow chart. If you don't mind, I'd love to include that in our show notes when we publish our newsletter, if that's okay with you.
For sure. You just made a good point. So Ben, I've had a lot of conversations with people who like, man, I just wish that I could do this one day. And, if I save this many dollars and so on, I can maybe do this in a decade. It's like, why can't we do this now or in a year? And we just start peeling it back like, oh, well, yeah, maybe you can't get a house in Aspen like right now, but like, why do you want that? Oh, you want to make sure that your kids know their grandparents? Like, okay, let's just carve out time to do that now. Like, we don't know how long they're going to be around, so let's go ahead and do this. So yeah, maybe there is a need to climb the ladder. And I'm not saying that's not important, but you need to first take a look around and say like, maybe I'm already there. Maybe I'm doing well. And let's live in the moment now and also plan for the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. Looking at goals, not necessarily as maybe linear. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I need to get X number of dollars in my retirement account so I can retire at X year. Like what you just said about the house in Aspen. It's like, for me, I love to go to California to skimboard. And I've always kind of had this pipe dream of owning a home on Laguna Beach, which you'd be pained to find something that's not 2 million plus. And thinking about just like my salary certainly doesn't provide for the ability to do that. But the point is, I like to spend time skimboarding with my friends. And maybe that will be, spending time on the beach and relaxing, enjoying nature with family. The byproduct of that passion has been sort of this like distraction to go try and buy a house in Laguna. Is that necessary? If I can just take, $1,000 vacation once a year, it will never amount to $2 million in expenditure. So like you said, always go back to those values. What are you trying to achieve and why is that important to you? And what are some of the ways you can just do it now, or in a different way, so you're not burdened and having to sacrifice other things. So it's giving me a lot to think about.
Yeah. And still, like, I mean, if you have a goal of something, like personally, like I'm probably one of the most frugal people you ever meet. Like, I don't buy stuff. And you ask my wife, it probably bothers her. Actually, I know it does. But I forgot who said it, but I heard someone say that I keep my needs small so my wants can be outrageous. I like that. Like, I don't buy a bunch of junk, but I definitely like my one selfish big thing is I personally one day want a house either in Telluride or Jackson Hole or something like that. It's probably going to cost, I don't know, $2 to $5 million. That would be great. Now, maybe that, again, maybe my goals will change. That's more of a goal, the underlying value. Like, I want that so I have a place to create moments and memories with my family and be able to give other people a place to go who can't afford a vacation. That's what I want. But maybe a house in Telluride is not necessary. Maybe I'll find that out in a few years and decide not to do that. But it doesn't mean that you should just throw goals out the window. Like, that certainly does. That provides a framework of how do I position myself. Like, if I want to retire at 45, it's like, oh, well, maybe that's just a goal. It's like, well, still use it. Like, probably should put money in accounts that actually allow you to access it before you're 60. And probably should invest in a way that's going to allow you to hit that goal. And probably look at how much are you spending now? What do you think you use then? Like, that goals are important. They inform the next best step. But again, continue to understand that, take the next step and then the next one. Don't get so caught up in like, I got to have a beach in Laguna or a house in Laguna Beach in X years and only go after that while being like so narrow-minded that you don't ever go to the beach now when you have perfect chance to, an hour away.
That's a great point. It won't do much good to, be in Laguna Beach or buying that home when I'm 40, 45. I won't be running as fast. So I might as well take advantage of the time I have now. That's a great point. Yeah. So Jim, I always love to ask this question to our guests. It's, what has been your biggest investing mistake? And because we're talking about life-based investing, I will give you the authority to choose if you want to make that investment decision be when you weren't aligned with your values and you made a financial decision. So investment or a financial decision, I give you the freedom to choose.
Man, all these kids we're having is expensive. So that's really hampering my ability to get that mountain house. I'm just kidding.
They'll pay for it when they grow up.
Yeah, you're right. No, I was prepared for this question. I've been mulling this over. I've made a lot of mistakes. I was pretty goofy back in the day. So one time I bought a individual stock position. I don't even remember the company. It was just something that I read about and was like, oh man, this is going to be great. So I bought, I don't know, $1,000 worth of it. And it went up like, I held it for 50 weeks and it didn't do anything. And then at like week 50 and a half, it went up like 8-fold. And I was like, all right, if I can wait a week and a half more, I can sell this and it'll be over a year and I can then sell it and have, the long-term capital gains rather than the short-term capital gain. If I just wait 1.5 weeks, well, in that 1.5 weeks, it literally went bankrupt. So that cost me, I don't know, that was years back. And this was a whole lot of money. I mean, still, you don't want to do that now, but that was like several thousands of dollars. First mistake is I didn't know what the heck I was investing in. So I had no way of evaluating, is that when I bought it, I didn't know if it was good or not. And then when it went up 8X, whatever, I still didn't know if it was good or not. So that was mistake one. Mistake two was allowing the tax tail to wag the investment dog. Of course, like taxes is something you can control. I love tax planning because it's like, shoot, if I could wait a couple more days and, get a 0% long-term capital gains rather than pay it short-term, like that'll save me, lots of money in taxes. But don't allow the tax. The problem was I let the taxes wag the investments, that was a painful mistake, but it's all right.
Yeah, I think it's always very sad when you have those experiences, and I've had plenty. I feel like everyone who is sort of in the Robin Hood era of investing, you get your penny stock and you're like, let me go buy some cheap stocks for $3, and it goes up and you're like, oh, I'm a genius. Chris and I, one of our next episodes coming up soon is touching upon that point exactly. It's like, what am I investing in and what is this investment worth? It's a really important thing that if you're making a big investment, buying a few hundred shares of a company, you better understand how that company makes money, because if you can't answer that, you probably shouldn't buy it. So thank you for sharing that. We love mistakes here. That's what makes us amateurs. You're an expert, but that's what we learn from most are the mistakes.
Yeah. I've got plenty of them. So
Definitely.
Us too.
Yeah. Like the saying's always like fail quick and often, but learn from them or something like that. I think that I kind of
fail fast.
Fail fast. Yeah. So I know my question I always ask is like, what's your best source to go to, whether it's a podcast, YouTube channel, book, TV, whatever it may be, for finding anything about financial investing, or where's your go-to if you only had one?
Michael Kitces. You can go to kitces.com and he writes a blog called The Nerd's Eye View.
All right, I'll check it out. I have not heard that one.
Man, if I can meet anyone today who's alive, I think it would be Kitces. He's the godfather of financial planning, genius. After I passed my test and reread my books, I just spent like a year reading every blog post he's ever written, and it's a gold mine. So kitces.com. Yeah, he writes pretty much anything financial planning.
Perfect. Yeah, Jim, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know we've been really planning through this episode for quite some time now. So really excited to have you on the show, and you have an open invitation for future episodes. Just for our viewers, for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about you or Intentional Living FP, where should they go?
So you can go to my website is intentionallivingfp.com.
Awesome.
And you can go there. Also, if you want, and if y'all could throw in the show notes, I'll create a link specifically for you listeners here. So if you want to go and go to intentionallivingfp.com/amateur investors, I'll have a landing page for you guys. If anyone out there, if you want to take a few minutes, throw some time in my calendar, I'd be more than happy to spend a few minutes, even if it's just a one-off question, like, let's go for it. I'll answer the question the best I can for you. Or if you want to spend some time, get to know each other and figure out if we can work together, like, I'd love that. So hop on, throw some time in my calendar, and be glad to talk.
Jim, you've been nothing but generous with your time. I might even take you up on that offer. So first of all, thank you so much for being on the show. Really excited to share this with our audience. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.